lecturer. Thank you, sir. I'm standing in for Professor Hussein Idoko Ibrahim, the DG of Raw Material Research and Development Council. The council is actually a neighbor to the Merit House. Not only are we neighbors, but we are also partners in progress. On this auspicious occasion, the DG of Raw Material Research and Development Council and the management of the council brings this goodwill message to this August gathering. The council supports what the Merit Award does, and it's on record that this is an award that recognizes distinguished Nigerians that have proven themselves in various fields of human endeavor. And it was on this note that we stand by what the Merit Award is doing, and hope that as many as will attend this gathering would like to take back to Nigerians and to the nation in general, and also recognize those that have put our nation on the map, those that are doing things that are making this country proud. It is also worthy to note that the council also gives awards to companies that are deserving, companies that have done things to try and add value to Nigeria's natural resources. So on that note, we stand with the National Merit Award and stand with this occasion and bring our goodwill message. And it's on this note that we hope that these awards will continue. These Nigerians that are deserving of this award will continue to be recognized, because there are people in this country that have done things that we need to recognize. And it is on this note that we bring this goodwill message to say that we recognize what this organization is doing, and we pray that they will continue to do more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, representative of the DG, RMRDC, Engineer Emmanuel Kwaya. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me quickly acknowledge the presence here of John Elisha Lahu, representing the Director General of NOSDRA, and also to acknowledge that students of the Nasarawa State University, KEFI, have also joined us in the hall here. You're welcome. And now, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may I invite the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs, Mrs. Ibiene Patricia Roberts, to now deliver a message of the Honorable Minister, Dr. George Akume.
Representative of the keynote speaker, Ambassador Damu Abbas, the representative of the Royal Father of the Day, Chairman of the Governing Board, and members, please permit me to align to the already with the existing protocol. I have been asked by the Honorable Minister, Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs, His Excellency Senator George Akume, to read his opening remarks. I am most delighted, and the I, not me, means His Excellency Senator George Akume, most delighted to welcome you to the 13th Annual Forum of Laureates of the Nigerian National Merit Award, NNMA, held today. Holding Turing. I feel very honored and have a sense of duty to be part of it. My appreciation goes to the leadership of the NNMA and the Laureates for prioritizing the development of the country by organizing this meeting as a platform to address issues of national unity. Over the years, the Forum of the Nigerian National Order of Merit Award, NNOM, Laureates maintains a unique tradition of bringing together intellectuals, academia, influencers, researchers, policymakers, and professionals from all walks of life to deliberate on contemporary thematic issues with a view to proffer. The 13th Annual Forum of Laureates of the Nigerian National Merit Award serves as a valuable guide and a platform for promoting, producing, recognizing, and rewarding intellectual excellence as a catalyst for national development. The theme for this year's forum, Building Nigeria Through National Integration, clearly demonstrates the need for establishing a non-rivalry, inclusive, and patriotic nation, a nation devoid of ethnic and religious sentiments, but united in its diversity. As stakeholders, some of the issues that must engage our minds as we deliberate in this meeting today and in our diverse spheres of life should relate to economic diversification, fostering economic growth, eradication of extreme poverty, promoting social inclusion, creation of jobs, and stemming environmental degradation, including our climate change in this nation. If we are able to achieve this, a significant part of our challenges as a nation will have been resolved. Without any recourse, we all know that the very symbol representing us in the sigma on the national coat of arms is unity and faith, peace and progress, and this must be our creed as citizens. At every given opportunity, our intents are mostly on identifying what impedes our development process, thus strategizing on roadmaps to actualizing our goals and visions as a nation. I must say that the tenacity and the dedication to develop these solutions to maintain a peaceful and advanced nation by the Nigerian national that is divided against itself shall not stand. Hence, as one Nigeria, we must stand together to defeat the mindsets that try to pull us down. We must stand tall against every form of violence and injustice. This can only be achieved through conscious effort to brainstorm and seek ways to achieve the aforementioned. Concluding, it is noteworthy to say that national integration has come to stay. It is therefore my sincere hope that the deliberations of these great minds will be referenced as the game changer in our nation's affairs. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, the Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs, delivering the remarks of the Honorable Minister, Dr. George Akume. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Industrial Training Fund, ITF, identifies with this forum, and its Director General, Sir Joseph Ari, has also sent in a representative to sit in at this forum, Alhaji Aminu Mohammed, Director ITF Corporate Office in Abuja. If you look in your programs, you would notice that there is a poetry performance by Nenge Daddy. Okay, here he comes. And I'd like to invite you to sit back and listen to the young man, Nenge Daddy, with a poem. Could you come up here, please? Thank you.
You know, if you want to go far in life, you pay homage to the oracles. That's why I just did that. So I am highly honored. I feel so delighted to be in the midst of this beautiful gathering, beautiful people of Nigeria. So today, the title of our poem is A New Madness. Get that right. Not just any madness, a new madness. So, there is a madness, a kind of madness that's honorable. There is a madness, a kind of madness that made the former First Lady of Nigeria, Mommy Dame Patience, to confess that there is God, oh. There is God, oh. There is a madness that is not imported, but it is born and bred in Nigeria. It is a son of the soil. It is the madness of geopolitical geography. How can we fight against the Biafra? And yet, in Kaduna, there is Kaduna North and Kaduna South. In Plateau State, there is Upper Plateau, Lower Plateau, and even Lower Plateau. There is a madness. It is the madness of misguided religion. Now, quote me anywhere. There is no disease worse than misguided and misinterpreted religion. Time meant for rising up and taking decisions is what we waste in prayer houses, making requests to deities, most times dead. And then what? We have heard, it has been said, that give unto God what is God's, and unto Caesar what? What is Caesar's? My people are yet to differentiate between faith and works. So we give praises to the wrong men and then blames to God for our own stupidity and misfortune. Meanwhile, it should be the other way round. When we begin to give praises to thieves more than God, tell me, will we move forward? Ranka-dede, 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 ranka-dede. Chant with me, please. Ranka-dede, 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 ranka-dede. Yet day by day, politicians they thief our destiny. So today, I have not come to preach. I'm not a preacher. Right? I'm not a fighter. But I have come to introduce to you a new madness. Kolowe new. I have come to introduce to you this beautiful lady that stole the heart of William Shakespeare, this fellow full of boundless potential that has been rejected for many years but has refused to die. Today, I have come to introduce to you this form of art that will rule the world few years from now. So, behold, I present to you P-O-E-T-R-Y, poetry, the madness of the mind expressed in creative words and actions. So poetry is the new madness we must use to counter the societal vices we have been battling. Poetry is our tool of war to amplify our voices and speak against bad governance and speak against false religion, to speak against ethnocentric divisions and all our problems. Because if we must unite Nigeria, then we must rise up today and speak, or else we will keep on making the same prayer points from one generation to another. And there will be no change. So, indefatigable excellencies, most honorable and most distinguished honorables, oracles, renowned oracles of the academia, prestigious ladies and gentlemen of Nigeria. I am Nengi Daddy. I am an ambassador of this new madness called poetry. With these strong points of mine, I hope you are convinced, but not confused, that poetry is a tool for national integration. And poetry is the new madness.
Gentlemen, Nengi Dadi with the poem, The New Madness. I understand the young man is a member of the National Youth Service Corps. His primary assignment right here at the NNME. Thank you. And now, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite, for the purposes of delivering the keynote address, Ambassador Adamu Abbas, to His Excellency Professor Babagana Umar Zulum, Governor of Borno State.
Representative of the Honorable Minister, the Chief Host, the Chairman of the Board, members of the Board, representative of the Royal Highness Authoritative, eminent professors in our midst, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm afraid you have to end up with me because the governor is unavoidably absent. Of course, Borno State is a very complex state because of the issues involved. So the governor is not in a very good position to determine his itinerary. The theme of today's forum is very important. And it is a topical issue. By the way, this paper I'm delivering, I wrote it on behalf of the Executive Governor of Borno State. So any deficiencies within, I take responsibility. National integration is an issue that has beholden Nigerians for a very long time. How to achieve integration within the parameters of the then emerging entity, Nigeria. That's before independence. It was the main preoccupation of the leadership or representatives of the various ethnic groups within the then emerging political entity. Though most Nigerian scholars today will hardly accept the fact that the then British colonialists were very much concerned with the issue of integration within the emerging political entity. But I think they did, for one primordial reason: the extent to which they would maximize their colonial interest. This could explain why Nigeria ended up with the legacy of federalism under the three regions before independence. My paper attempts to introduce certain theoretical fundamentals of national integration in the hope that they will generate enthusiasm to guide the trajectory of the discussion. The fundamentals are anchored on the acceptance of the fact that Nigeria indeed needs to strengthen its integration process. The theme of the discussion assumes that very point. To build means there are so many fundamentals of national integration that are missing. That has to be put up. And this paper accepts this assumption. Before we go on to the fundamentals, it is important we address conceptual issues. Let's clarify the concepts first, so that we can get a very good understanding of the theme itself. So clarification of key concepts of any theme is in any academic discourse. In this theme, the key concept is national integration. Though the concept appears to be easily understood, clarifying it from the perspective of this paper will facilitate understanding of the theme, possibly shape the trajectory of the discussion. What is the concept national integration? There is no consensus in the literature on the conceptual definition of integration. It is an elusive concept. However, explained from the social or community perspective, it is a disposition to act together and be committed to mutual programs within a community or social entity. National integration, therefore, carries an added dimension of political factors, because that's when we're talking about integration. Now, national integration. There are numerous clarifications of this subject in the literature. For our purposes, which focus is national integration in the country, the clarification by Agbode in 1988 is apt. It is a process leading to political cohesion and sentiments of loyalty towards a central political authority and institutions by individuals belonging to different social groups or political units. It is important to note that it is a process. And this process is expected, according to Coleman and Rosberg, to usher in a progressive reduction of cultural and regional tensions to create one political community. This is the primary objective of national integration. It reduces cultural, ethnic, and regional tension, people of different ethnic, social, cultural, and religious background together for their own good, the good of the society, and the good of the country. In this regard, Two important attributes of the successful attainment of national integrations are, one, disposition to act together and be committed to mutual programs within a nation, and loyalty towards a central political authority and institutions by people of diverse ethnicity, religion, language, and social cultural persuasions. Before I go to the fundamentals of integration, there's a need to clarify two additional concepts that are linked to national integration. These concepts are patriotism and nationalism. The rationale being that patriotism and nationalism are born out of successful national integration. Because once you succeeded in integrating the nation, issues of patriotism and nationalism become given. It is pertinent to note that in some literature, the usage of the concept patriotism and nationalism have been used interchangeably. Nonetheless, there's a subtle difference between the two. Simply put, patriotism is national loyalty in terms of devotion, support, and defense of one's country. Given the reality of the Nigerian situation, however, the following definition by Oxford Encyclopedia is more apt. It says, patriotism is identification with one's own country that include a commitment to promote the well-being of the country and the willingness to sacrifice to promote the goodness of the country. To me, this is apt in the context of the Nigerian current reality. Commitment to promote the well-being of the country and willingness to sacrifice are questionable in our current reality. So they represent the missing link as far as national integration process is concerned. Nationalism. It is a form of patriotism, but an excessive one that metaphors into an ideology. It is an aggressive form of patriotism. The subtle difference is in the way they are exhibited. While patriotism is exhibited without ill thoughts about other ethnic groups, regions, and nations, nationalism is exhibited with hostile thoughts and actions against other groups and citizens anchored on issues of common ancestry, history, and a set of cultural traits. The issues of ethnic nationalities in Nigeria readily comes to mind. In short, patriotism is defensive, while nationalism is aggressive. Now let's look at the challenges of national integration, having gone through the conceptual clarifications. It has already been noted that national integration in Nigeria is very weak. It needs strengthening or building. Given this premise, we need to identify the factors responsible for the national integration process in the country. I use the term snail speed. We are doing something, of course, but the progress is very, very slow. There are numerous factors. They include, among others, issues of governance, strong ethnic loyalty, and the facts of history, such as our colonial experience, that has been identified, rightly or wrongly, as the single most important impediment to Nigeria's national integration process. This is a matter for national debate. But the most important point is the issue of bad or poor governance. It is the opinion of this paper that the linchpin of non-integration in Nigeria is bad governance, which unfortunately is multifaceted. Bad governance is born out of one important factor that is known to all of us here: corruption. Why is that? Corruption drains resources away from development, which in turn creates unequal development that accentuates poverty, widens the gap between the haves and the have-nots, and most importantly, negates the rule of law and promotes impunity. In fact, bad governance can be equated with absence of the rule of law. The much talk about weak institutions in Nigeria is nothing but the primacy, but expression of the primacy of impunity over the rule of law. Personally, I don't believe that we have weak institutions. We have strong institutions, because every institution in this country has its own institutional framework and legal framework. There may be gaps here and there in these frameworks, but the main problem is those assigned to manage these institutions are the problem. That is us. You are given a position in a given institution, the laws and guidelines are there, and you don't follow them. And of course, how the institution will work, and then we say it's a weak institution. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think we have weak institutions. The problem is with us. Why can't we follow the guidelines or the frameworks within which an institution is established? Imagine a triangle. At the top, you have corruption, which is multifaceted. And then on the left side, because corruption drains the resources needed to develop, then bad governance comes in. Because with good governance, such developments will take place. And when you have bad governance, what happens? It creates ungoverned spaces, especially in the rural areas. When you have ungoverned spaces, criminals take over, and they impose their own governance system in those areas. And they do that through all kinds of illegality, including flow of small arms and light weapons. And when you have that, then you go to the right of the triangle. Then you get insecurity. Because they create insecurity. With the insecurity, what happens? The elite at the top that are involved in corruption, what do? They put more resources to address the insecurity. And that itself is an avenue for more corruption. Talking about it, one of the root causes of insecurity, as I said, is unbridled corruption in the governance system. Corruption in the system corners over 80% of the national resources. The remaining 20% is not even enough. Challenges to national integration. Members of a particular ethnic group, because of mismanagement, which was borne by the corruption of national resources that creates poverty consequent upon bad governance, predispose themselves to be loyal to their own ethnic group, to be favored over members of other ethnic groups. The other issue is illiteracy and ignorance. This is also linked to bad governance, whereby when you create unequal development that creates poverty or even lack of governance in some areas, why do you have rampant illiteracy? Funds for education and other social services have been sucked in by corruption in the private sector, in the public sector, with the active collaboration of the private sector. Corruption it doesn't end in the public sector. The private sector is part and parcel of corruption in this country. Another factor of national integration is issue of marginalization and minority issues at all three tiers of government. Much has been said and written about the non-inclusion of some major ethnic groups in the national political process. Unfortunately, little is being said about the marginalization of minority ethnic groups at the state and the local government levels. At those levels, a lot of minorities are crying of marginalization, but nobody hears their voices. Now, what's the way forward? As I said, snail speed of integration process is happening. Why did I say that? The Nigerian government has already established or put in place numerous mechanisms since independence to move the process of national integration forward. These include, among others, Nigerianization policies to empower Nigerians, NYSC, unity schools, national language policy, federalism and federal character policy, democracy and party politics, creation of states and local governments, etc. Unfortunately, these policies were undermined by three main factors. First, as I've always said, corruption in the governance system. Second, lack of or poor implementation. And third, manipulation of democratic process to settle, to serve elite or ruling class interests, which is itself a form of subtle corruption. Addressing these challenges is the way forward to build national integration in this country. As I already reiterated, one of the biggest issues is the corruption and manipulation of a democratic process. The fundamental problem, which is intertwined with the problem of leadership, is corruption. But the notion of leadership itself is something that is yet to be grasped by the ruling elite, especially selfless service, because there are three categories of leadership. You have the selfless leadership, you have the selfish one, and you have the selfful one. To give you a very good leadership actually is. It's not the issue you are at the top, you are ordering everybody right up and down, and you think you are a leader. No. I'm going to give a quotation from a scholar called Sula in a title, in a paper, in a journal called Integrating Leadership with Ethics. Is good leadership contrary to human nature? She observes that understanding selfless leadership is reflected in Herman Hesse' book entitled Journey to the East. It's a pamphlet written, Journey to the East. This is the quotation. He said, on a journey, a servant, Leo, carries the bags and does the traveler's chores. There is something special about Leo. He keeps the group together with his presence and songs. When Leo mysteriously disappears, the group loses its way. Leo was the actual leader because of his sacrifice of his time, talent, treasure, for the benefit of the group. The point of leadership is to serve others. Can we say the same thing with leadership in Nigeria? This is something debatable. The other impediment in the leadership category, which also affects the integration process, is what I call the three metaphysical of leadership, conflict of leadership. One is the issue of ethnicity. The other is the clan. The clan here, it doesn't mean you are a tribe or something, no. Any group of people with interest. For example, elite is a clan on itself. Because you all know that in Nigeria, when it comes to the interests of the elite, every ethnic group, every religious group are part and parcel of that elite. So that's the clan. And then, of course, we have religion. Our leaders are torn by loyalty to either one, two, or all three of the metaphysical source of conflict. And there are typical examples. I'll give you one example. I have so many examples. I'll give you one example. During the First Republic, when Zik Awolowo won a seat in the West, what happens eventually? He has to go to the East. That's the problem in terms of conflict. And our leaders are yet to really address that important issue. As I said, my paper is just to put the case on the table and shape the discussion. Long live Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Adamu Abbas, with that keynote address, standing in for Professor Babagana Umar Zulum, the Governor of Borno State. Now, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with the presentation of that keynote address, may I now call on Professor Adeleji Nadu to deliver the vote of thanks. Professor Adeleji Nadu, thank you.
His Excellency, the Governor of Borno State, the representative of the Tortiv, the Permanent Secretary of our parent ministry, the Chairman of the Board, distinguished friends and colleagues, I approach this task, vote of thanks, with some trepidation. Trepidation because it is always ambiguous how one plays a role that has been assigned to one. One has to determine what is the nature of that role and how best to role. But having said that, I must also say that for me, it's a very, very pleasant task today for various reasons, because we have before us the most shining of the intellectual clerisy in this country and in Africa. And one stands before them to pay tribute to them, realizing one's own inadequacies. But nonetheless, as I said, it is my pleasant duty to do that. And I shall be a bit unconventional in playing that role, going beyond what is the normal convention of doing things. Of course, we thank the President of the Federal Republic for continuing to support the NNMA, and particularly the idea of the NNMA. And particularly the Minister for playing that important oversight role, which he should play in the conduct of the affairs of the NNMA. I think the ministry has upheld that tradition. It remains for me, of course, to thank all those who are here today for being part of this important forum. Having said that, let me put a bit of myself in departing from the tradition to say a few words of thanks to those who have kept the idea of me flying and who have been regular attendees at the Forum of the Laureates, providing that model of what intellectuals owe society to the rest of us through their routine, almost unavoidable presence at the Laureates over the years. Of course, we miss some of them who are not with us here today. Some have passed. Professor Latipo Mabugunje. Other chairmen are here with us. Former chairman, Professor Aya, is here with us. We miss Professor Umaru Shehu, who's been a regular presence. We miss Professor Ayo Banjo. But we're happy that Professor Bangboshi has continued that tradition of keeping the flame ahead and serving as a role model. And I'm sure that the students from the Nasarawa State University and from Birmingham University will find some inspiration to guide them as they go ahead in their career in the fact that Professor Banjo, Professor Bangboshi, and Professor Aya are here. You cannot mention the leading lights of intellectual clerisy without mentioning their names. Because we have Professor Ladipo Ajamolekun here. Thank you, you've always been coming. Professor Esobue, who is also here. So I think you younger ones, you should see this occasion as an inspiration for you to keep up the intellectual vocation in this country. And that is why I think I want to thank them, especially for being here. And for those of them who are here who have continued that tradition. Now, I also want to depart briefly. I'm not going to comment on the keynote address, which was delivered with such excellence. And the role of a giver of a vote of thanks is not to be the paper. But I want to thank His Excellency the Ambassador for setting the tone. I'm placing at hand before us, clearly on the table, And his presentation reminds me of a fellow political scientist who says that the problem of democracy and the problem of democracy and development and nation building, that whole process is in a perpetual crisis because of unfulfilled possibilities. And yet, the promise that it holds out for us, that is that paradox that we need to resolve. We have hopes. Those hopes are not being fulfilled. All of them cannot be fulfilled. And it creates a reversion of rights and expectations. And then, but the fact that we can go beyond those expectations because the promise is still there. And sometimes we fail to realize that temporary mishaps, temporary problems are simply telling us that we need to be alive to our responsibility and keep that hope flying. And I think that is one message I got from the presentation, and I want to thank His Excellency for that. Now, the last point I want to make is simply this, to thank the young poets. We have great poets here. Great poets are here before us. Dramatists, I call them clowns. but you know, palace clowns are very, very important to maintain royalty, and they play a very, very important role. So the word clowns is not used in a derogatory sense, but an appreciation. I always tell Obafemi that he's a clown, you know, and he uses that word clown to say truths that some people are afraid to say, that they will not get away with if they say it in other occasions. So, but the young poet, I think, has done a very good service to us today. And I'm saying that because it leads directly to the theme of the winner's lecture tomorrow, poetry and I think the title is something like to the extent of poetry and the duty of the citizen and so on, and human condition. You know, and I think in that short presentation, the young poet has highlighted the state of our nation today and the condition of what we might need to do it. So it makes me look forward excitedly to Niyi's presentation tomorrow. Because I feel myself, you know, there is a lot of sense in what the Romantic poet William Wordsworth said when he says, poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. You know, and part of that responsibility is to tell us what we are doing wrong, but beyond that, what needs to be done, what we should do. So I want to thank him. Finally, I must of course thank my chairman for giving me this opportunity to say these few words as a way of making myself relevant to this occasion. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Professor Adeliji Nadu. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this brings to an effective conclusion the morning part of this opening ceremony day one. In a short while from now, we'll take a tea break that will last just 30 minutes, and then we'll reconvene for the technical session. Tea break will be just for 30 minutes, and then we'll reconvene for the technical session. The first paper, of course, will be Dimensions for National Security, and we'll make the necessary announcements at that time. So we'll take a break now, and in 30 minutes, we'll reconvene for the first technical session. But back to the present, may we rise again for the national anthem as we conclude this morning's session. Thank you.